Imagine this. You're scrolling through your phone at 11 p.m., your mind racing with tomorrow's deadlines, next week's presentations, and that conversation you had 3 hours ago that you're still replaying in your head. Your heart's beating faster, your shoulders are tense, and sleep feels impossible. Now imagine being responsible not just for your own life, but for the entire Roman Empire, literally the most powerful position on earth at the time. That was Marcus Aurelius's reality every single day for nearly 2 decades. As Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD, he controlled the fate of millions of people across 3 continents. He dealt with plagues that killed thousands, wars that threatened the empire's borders, political conspiracies that could end his life, and economic crises that could collapse civilization as he knew it. If anyone had a legitimate reason to panic, to lose sleep, to let anxiety consume them, it was this man. Yet Marcus Aurelius became known not for his military conquests or political achievements, but for something far more remarkable, his unshakable inner peace. While governing the ancient world's greatest superpower, he developed a personal philosophy that kept him calm, focused, and mentally resilient through every crisis. The crazy part? He never intended for anyone else to read his thoughts. His personal journal, which we now call meditations, was his private space to work through stress, anxiety, and the overwhelming pressures of leadership. Here's what makes Marcus Aurelius different from every other self-help guru or motivational speaker you've ever encountered. He wasn't selling anything. He wasn't trying to build a personal brand or launch a course. He was literally just trying to survive the most stressful job in human history while maintaining his sanity and moral compass. His techniques weren't theoretical. They were battle-tested under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. Most people know about Stoicism's famous negative visualization practice, where you imagine losing everything you care about to appreciate what you have. That's Stoicism 101. But today, we're diving into 3 lesser-known techniques that Marcus Aurelius used daily, techniques that are incredibly relevant for anyone living in modern America, dealing with work stress, family pressures, financial anxiety, or just the general overwhelm of contemporary life. These aren't abstract philosophical concepts that sound good on paper but fall apart in real life. These are practical tools that helped the most powerful man in the ancient world stay grounded, make clear decisions under pressure, and maintain his humanity while carrying unimaginable responsibility. If they worked for someone managing an empire, they can definitely work for someone managing a career, a family, and the chaos of modern American life. The beautiful thing about Marcus Aurelius's approach is that it doesn't require you to retreat from the world, quit your job, or spend hours meditating in silence. These techniques are designed for people who are fully engaged with life's demands but want to navigate them with more peace, clarity, and confidence. They're for people who understand that true strength isn't about powering through stress. It's about developing the inner resources to handle whatever life throws at you without losing your center. So whether you're stuck in traffic in downtown Chicago, dealing with a difficult boss in Manhattan, or lying awake at 2 a.m. in Phoenix worrying about bills, these ancient insights from Rome's greatest emperor are about to change how you handle pressure forever. Let's start with the first technique that might completely revolutionize how you think about productivity and peace of mind. 1. Stop doing everything. The ancient art of saying no. Sarah stares at her laptop screen in her cramped Manhattan apartment at 9:47 p.m. She's got 3 client presentations due tomorrow, a networking event she promised to attend, 2 podcasts she's supposed to listen to for professional development, A yoga class she's already skipped twice this week, dinner plans with friends she doesn't want to cancel again, and 17 unread articles in her browser tabs about maximizing productivity. Her phone buzzes with another Slack notification. Her head is pounding. She feels like she's drowning in her own ambition. This scenario plays out in millions of American homes every night. We've bought into the myth that doing more equals being more successful, more valuable, more worthy. We pack our schedules until there's no breathing room, then wonder why we feel anxious, scattered, and exhausted. We've confused being busy with being productive, and motion with progress. Marcus Aurelius had a radical solution that goes against everything our hustle-obsessed culture teaches us. Do less. Now, before you dismiss this as lazy or unrealistic, understand that Marcus Aurelius wasn't some trust fund philosopher lounging around in togas. He was running the Roman Empire, managing armies, making life and death decisions, dealing with natural disasters, and handling political crises that would make modern presidential campaigns look like playground disputes. If anyone had an excuse to be busy every waking moment, it was him. Yet, in his personal writings, he repeatedly came back to this theme of intentional reduction. He wrote, "If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? But we need to eliminate unnecessary assumptions as well, to eliminate the unnecessary actions that follow." Notice what he's saying here. It's not just about cutting activities. It's about examining the thoughts and assumptions that drive those activities in the first place. Sarah's problem isn't just that she's overcommit. It's that she's operating from the assumption that she needs to do all these things to be successful, valued, or secure. The modern trap of infinite options. In Marcus Aurelius's time, your options were limited by geography, technology, and social structure. If you lived in ancient Rome, you couldn't simultaneously be a senator, a merchant in Egypt, a philosopher in Athens, and a warrior in Gaul. Your choices were naturally constrained. Today, we have unlimited options, and that's both a blessing and a curse. You can learn any skill on YouTube, start any business online, connect with anyone on social media, consume content from around the world, and pursue dozens of different career paths simultaneously. The paradox of choice has created a generation of people who are afraid to miss out on anything, so they try to do everything. Take Marcus, a 32-year-old software developer in Seattle. He's got his full-time job, but he's also trying to build a side business, learn Spanish on Duolingo, maintain his fitness routine, keep up with 3 different friend groups, stay current with industry trends, contribute to open source projects, and somehow find time for dating. He's constantly switching between tasks, never fully present in any of them, and always feeling behind. Marcus Aurelius would look at this modern Marcus and ask one simple question: is this necessary? The Stoic definition of necessary. When Stoics talk about what's necessary, they're not just talking about survival needs. They're talking about what's essential to living according to your values and fulfilling your role in life. For Marcus Aurelius, his necessary activities included governing justly, making thoughtful decisions, maintaining his physical health, studying philosophy, and being a good father and husband. Everything else was optional. This doesn't mean Stoics are joyless robots who only do the bare minimum. It means they're incredibly intentional about where they invest their finite time and energy. They understand that saying yes to everything meaningful means saying no to everything truly important. Let's go back to Sarah in Manhattan. If she applied the Stoic filter of necessity to her overwhelming schedule, she might realize that 3 client presentations are necessary for her career, but the networking event might not be if she's already well connected in her field. The yoga class might be necessary for her mental and physical health, but the productivity podcasts might just be feeding her anxiety about not doing enough. The hidden cost of unnecessary activities. Marcus Aurelius understood something that modern productivity culture misses. Every unnecessary activity doesn't just cost you the time it takes to do it. It costs you mental energy, decision-making capacity, and peace of mind. Consider David, a marketing manager in Los Angeles who's always saying yes to coffee meetings, industry events, and side projects. He tells himself he's networking and staying busy, but really he's avoiding the harder work of focusing deeply on what matters most. Each commitment requires mental energy to remember, plan for, and execute. Each obligation creates a small background stress that accumulates throughout the day. By the time David gets home, he's mentally exhausted not from doing important work, but from managing the complexity of his overcommit life. He's too drained to be present with his family, too scattered to work on projects he actually cares about, and too anxious to sleep well. Marcus Aurelius recognized this pattern in his own life and in the lives of people around him. He observed that people often engage in many unnecessary activities, not because these activities serve any real purpose, but because they're afraid of stillness, afraid of missing out, or afraid of confronting what really matters. The art of intelligent reduction. Doing less doesn't mean becoming lazy or lowering your standards. It means working more intelligently. It means choosing fewer things and doing them with greater focus, energy, and excellence. Think about Maria, a small business owner in Chicago who used to say yes to every potential client, every networking opportunity, and every new marketing strategy she read about. She was working 70-hour weeks but barely making ends meet. Then she applied the Marcus Aurelius principle. She identified her 3 most profitable client types, said no to everything else, and focused entirely on serving those clients exceptionally well. Within 6 months, she was working 45 hours a week and earning 40% more revenue. More importantly, she had mental space to think strategically about her business instead of just reacting to whatever urgent task was in front of her. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant by working more intelligently. When you eliminate the unnecessary, you create space for excellence in what remains. You move from being busy to being effective, from being scattered to being focused, from being reactive to being intentional. The communication component. Marcus Aurelius also extended the do less principle to conversation. He noticed that many conversations are nonsensical, unproductive, and waste time and energy. In our age of constant communication texts, emails, Slack messages, social media comments, this insight is more relevant than ever. Consider how much mental energy you spend each day on communications that don't actually serve any meaningful purpose. The group chat that's just people sharing memes. The email chains that could have been resolved with one phone call. The social media arguments about topics you'll forget about next week. Jennifer, a teacher in Phoenix, realized she was spending 2 hours every evening responding to non-essential communications, parent emails that weren't urgent, social media comments on posts she barely cared about, and text conversations that had no real point. When she started applying the "is this necessary?" filter to her communications, she reclaimed those 2 hours for lesson planning, reading, and spending quality time with her husband. This doesn't mean becoming antisocial or ignoring people who need your attention. It means being intentional about which conversations deserve your mental energy and which ones are just noise. The practical implementation system. Marcus Aurelius suggests a simple but powerful practice: making a list of tasks the night before. This isn't just about organization. It's about premeditation and intentional choice-making when your mind is calm and clear. Here's how to implement this Stoic practice in modern life. Every evening, before you check your phone one last time or fall into the Netflix rabbit hole, spend 10 minutes writing down what you need to accomplish tomorrow. But here's the crucial part. For each item on your list, ask yourself Marcus Aurelius's question: is this necessary? If the answer is yes, keep it. If the answer is, well, it might be helpful, or I should probably do this, cross it out. If the answer is, I don't know, but everyone else seems to think it's important, definitely cross it out. This practice serves two purposes. First, it helps you start each day with clarity about what actually matters, rather than just reacting to whoever emails you first or whatever crisis feels most urgent. Second, it has what Marcus Aurelius called a calming effect on the mind by reducing worries about what needs to be done. When you know exactly what you need to focus on and why it matters, your mind can rest. When your day is a chaotic mix of urgent but unimportant tasks, your mind stays in a constant state of low-level anxiety. The compound effect of essentialism. The beautiful thing about consistently applying the do less principle is that it compounds over time. Each unnecessary activity you eliminate creates more space for what matters. Each non-essential commitment you decline creates more energy for meaningful work. Take Robert, a financial advisor in Miami who used to attend every industry conference, read every finance blog, and try to maintain relationships with hundreds of potential clients. He was constantly busy but never felt like he was making real progress. When he started ruthlessly prioritizing, focusing on just the top 20% of activities that produced 80% of his results, everything changed. Not only did his income increase, but his stress decreased dramatically. He had time to develop deeper relationships with his best clients, which led to more referrals. He had mental space to think creatively about his business strategy. He had energy left over to be present with his family and pursue hobbies he'd abandoned years ago. This is the promise of Marcus Aurelius's do less philosophy. Not just more time, but more tranquility. Not just higher productivity, but deeper satisfaction. Not just better results, but a calmer mind. Breaking free from the busy trap. The hardest part about implementing this principle isn't the practical logistics. It's overcoming the psychological resistance. We've been conditioned to believe that busy equals important, that having a packed schedule means we're valuable, that saying no means we're lazy or uncommitted. Marcus Aurelius understood this trap because he lived in a culture that also equated activity with virtue. Roman society valued industriousness, just like American culture does today. But he recognized that there's a difference between meaningful work and meaningless motion. The Stoics highly valued productivity, but they defined it differently than we do. For them, productivity meant making progress toward wisdom, virtue, and the common good, not just checking items off an endless to-do list. When you start applying the "is this necessary?" filter to your life, you'll probably feel some anxiety at first. Your brain will generate all sorts of reasons why you need to keep doing everything you're currently doing. You'll worry about missing opportunities, disappointing people, or falling behind. This is normal. Marcus Aurelius felt it too. But he understood that the fear of missing out on unnecessary things was preventing him from fully engaging with necessary things. He chose depth over breadth, quality over quantity, intention over reaction. As you begin to experience the peace that comes from a more focused life, you'll realize that you weren't actually missing anything important by saying no to the non-essential. You were just making room for what truly matters, and that makes all the difference in how calm and centered you feel as you navigate each day. But even when you've mastered the art of doing less, life will still present you with moments when you feel overwhelmed, trapped, or desperate for escape. That's where Marcus Aurelius' second technique becomes invaluable. And it's probably not what you'd expect from someone who had unlimited resources to travel anywhere in the ancient world. 2. Your mind is your only safe space. How to escape without going anywhere. It's 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Jake is stuck in Chicago traffic on the Dan Ryan Expressway. He's been sitting in the same spot for 20 minutes, watching his GPS estimate creep from 5 minutes away to 37 minutes away. His client meeting started 10 minutes ago. His phone is buzzing with increasingly frustrated texts from his boss. The car next to him is blasting music so loud it's making his windows vibrate. The stress is building in his chest like a pressure cooker about to explode. Jake's first instinct? I need to get out of this city. I need a vacation. I need to move somewhere peaceful. Maybe Colorado or Vermont. Somewhere without traffic jams and deadlines and constant noise. Sound familiar? We've all been there. When life feels overwhelming, our natural response is to want to escape, physically remove ourselves from whatever situation is causing us stress. We fantasize about quitting our jobs and moving to a beach town, booking a last-minute flight to somewhere exotic, or just driving until we find a place where no one knows our name and we have no responsibilities. The vacation industry, the self-help retreat business, and even the entire digital nomad movement are built on this fundamental human desire to solve our problems by changing our location. We spend billions of dollars every year trying to find external environments that will give us the peace we can't seem to create internally. Marcus Aurelius had access to literally any location in the known world. As Roman emperor, he could have built palaces in the most beautiful, serene locations across the empire. He could have retreated to mountain villas, seaside resorts, or peaceful countryside estates whenever he felt stressed. He had unlimited resources to create the perfect external environment for relaxation and peace. Instead, he developed one of the most counterintuitive insights in all of philosophy. The idea that seeking peace through changing your location is not just ineffective, it's actually counterproductive. The fundamental problem with geographic solutions. Marcus Aurelius was blunt about people who tried to solve their internal problems with external changes. He called it idiotic to seek refuge from daily worries through travel or by residing in quiet places like mountains or beaches. That might seem harsh, but his reasoning was profound. Wherever you go, he observed, you bring yourself with you. Think about that for a moment. Every time you've tried to escape stress by changing your environment, what happened? Maybe you felt better for a few days, a week, or even a month. The novelty of the new place, the break from routine, the different scenery, it all provided temporary relief. But eventually, you found yourself dealing with the same types of problems, the same patterns of thinking, the same emotional reactions that caused you stress in the first place. Consider Lisa, a marketing executive from Los Angeles who was feeling burned out from the constant pressure, traffic, and superficiality of LA life. She decided to take a month-long digital detox retreat in Costa Rica, convinced that getting away from the city would solve her anxiety and help her find clarity about her life direction. For the first week, Lisa felt amazing. The beautiful scenery, the slower pace, the absence of work emails. It was exactly what she thought she needed. But by the second week, she found herself getting anxious about different things. She worried about falling behind at work, about whether her boss would respect her when she returned, about what she was going to do with her life after the retreat ended. By the third week, she was checking her phone obsessively and planning her next escape before this one had even ended. The problem wasn't Los Angeles. The problem was that Lisa brought her anxious mind, her perfectionist tendencies, and her fear-based thinking patterns with her to Costa Rica. The external change provided a temporary distraction, but it didn't address the root cause of her stress. Marcus Aurelius's revolutionary alternative. Instead of seeking external escapes, Marcus Aurelius proposed something radical. Get away by going within. He wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." This wasn't just philosophical poetry. This was practical advice from someone who had tested it under the most stressful conditions imaginable. While managing wars, plagues, political conspiracies, and the daily administrative burden of governing millions of people, Marcus Aurelius discovered that the most reliable source of peace wasn't a physical location. It was a mental practice. But here's what makes his approach different from modern meditation or mindfulness techniques. He wasn't advocating for hours of sitting in silence or retreating from the world. He was talking about brief mental escapes that you could take anywhere, anytime, even in the middle of chaos. Think about David, a software engineer in Seattle who's dealing with a toxic work environment, a demanding boss, and the constant pressure of tech industry layoffs. He can't just quit his job. He's got a mortgage and student loans. He can't take a month off to find himself. He's got bills to pay. But he can take what Marcus Aurelius called short escapes throughout his day. These aren't elaborate meditation sessions. They're brief moments where David consciously shifts his attention from the external chaos to his internal landscape. Maybe it's 30 seconds in the bathroom where he focuses on his breathing. Maybe it's a 2-minute walk around the office where he reminds himself of what's actually within his control. Maybe it's a moment before he opens his laptop in the morning where he sets an intention for how he wants to respond to whatever challenges the day brings. The 2 pillars of internal escape. Marcus Aurelius provided 2 specific ideas to focus on during these mental retreats, and they're incredibly relevant for anyone dealing with modern stress. First pillar, things have no hold on the soul. They stand there unmoving, outside it. Disturbance comes only from within, from our own perceptions. This is a game changer when you really understand it. Your job doesn't have the power to make you stressed. Your thoughts about your job create the stress. Your relationship doesn't have the power to make you anxious. Your interpretation of what's happening in your relationship creates the anxiety. The traffic jam doesn't have the power to ruin your day. Your reaction to being stuck in traffic determines your emotional state. Take Maria, a nurse in Miami who works in a busy emergency room. She used to come home every day completely drained, not just physically but emotionally. She'd absorbed the stress, pain, and chaos of everyone around her. She felt like her work environment was toxic and that she needed to find a different job in a calmer setting. Then Maria started applying Marcus Aurelius's first principle. She began to recognize that while she couldn't control the chaos of the ER, she could control her response to it. The screaming patient in bed 3 wasn't making her stressed. Her thought that, "I can't handle this," was creating the stress. The demanding doctor wasn't ruining her day. Her belief that, "This is unfair," was generating her frustration. This doesn't mean Maria became emotionally numb or stopped caring about her patients. It means she learned to distinguish between the external circumstances and her internal response to those circumstances. She realized that she had been giving her power away to situations and people who didn't actually have the ability to control her inner state. Second pillar. Everything you see will soon alter and cease to exist. Think of how many changes you've already seen. The world is nothing but change. Our life is only perception. This second principle addresses one of the root causes of why we want to escape. We get attached to our current circumstances, whether they're good or bad, and we suffer when they inevitably change. When things are going well, we stress about losing what we have. When things are going poorly, we stress about being stuck in the current situation forever. Either way, we're fighting against the fundamental nature of reality, that everything is temporary and constantly changing. Consider Robert, a small business owner in Phoenix whose restaurant was struggling during the economic downturn. He was working 18-hour days, barely sleeping, and constantly worried about losing everything he'd built. The stress was affecting his health, his marriage, and his ability to make clear decisions about his business. Robert's mind was trapped in a story that this difficult period was permanent, that he was defined by his current struggles, and that his worth as a person was tied to the success or failure of his restaurant. He was looking for ways to escape. Maybe sell the business and move somewhere cheaper, maybe declare bankruptcy and start over, maybe just run away from all the responsibility. When Robert started applying Marcus Aurelius's second principle, his perspective shifted dramatically. He began to see his current struggles as one temporary phase in a much larger story. He remembered all the changes he'd already survived, other economic downturns, personal challenges, business obstacles that seemed insurmountable at the time but were now just memories. This didn't make his current problems disappear, but it gave him access to a much calmer, more resourceful state of mind. Instead of being trapped in panic about his circumstances, he could step back and see them as part of the natural flow of change that characterizes all of life. The modern application, creating mental sanctuaries. The beauty of Marcus Aurelius's approach is that it works anywhere. You don't need a meditation room, a yoga studio, or a retreat center. You don't need to quit your job, move to a different city, or wait for your circumstances to change. You can create a mental sanctuary in the middle of a crowded subway car, a chaotic office, or a house full of screaming children. Let's look at how this works in practice for Jennifer, a single mother in Denver who's juggling a full-time job, 2 teenagers, and elderly parents who need increasing amounts of care. Her days are packed from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. with responsibilities, and she often feels like she's drowning in other people's needs and expectations. Jennifer can't escape to Bali for a month of self-discovery. She can't even escape to her bedroom for an hour of uninterrupted time most days. But she can take Marcus Aurelius-style mental retreats throughout her day. When she's stuck in the carpool line, instead of scrolling through social media and absorbing more stress-inducing information, she might spend those 5 minutes applying the first principle, reminding herself that her teenage daughter's attitude isn't making her frustrated. Her thoughts about her daughter's attitude are creating the frustration. The situation is just what it is. Her interpretation of it determines her emotional experience. When she's lying in bed at night with her mind racing about everything she needs to do tomorrow, she might apply the second principle, remembering that this overwhelming phase of life is temporary, just like every other phase she's been through. Her kids won't be teenagers forever. Her parents' health situation will change. Her work challenges will evolve. Nothing stays the same, which means this too shall pass. The neuroscience behind internal escapes. Modern neuroscience has validated what Marcus Aurelius discovered through experience. Brief mental breaks that shift your perspective can literally change your brain chemistry and nervous system response to stress. When you're caught in a stress response, your sympathetic nervous system is activated, flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Your thinking becomes narrow and reactive. Your body tenses up. Your breathing becomes shallow. You're in survival mode, not problem-solving mode. When you take a Marcus Aurelius-style mental retreat, even for just 30 seconds, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms your body and clears your mind. You shift from reactive thinking to responsive thinking. You move from feeling like a victim of your circumstances to remembering that you have choices about how to interpret and respond to whatever is happening. This isn't just feel-good philosophy. It's practical neuroscience that you can apply immediately, breaking the addiction to external solutions. One of the reasons Marcus Aurelius's approach is so powerful is that it breaks our addiction to external solutions for internal problems. We live in a culture that's constantly selling us the idea that happiness, peace, and fulfillment can be purchased, achieved, or found in some external circumstance. Feel stressed? Buy a vacation. Feel unfulfilled? Change careers. Feel lonely? Find a relationship. Feel anxious? Move to a different city. Feel overwhelmed? Buy a productivity system. There's nothing wrong with vacations, career changes, relationships, or new locations. The problem comes when we expect these external changes to solve internal challenges that can only be addressed from the inside out. Marcus Aurelius understood that when you develop the ability to find peace within yourself, regardless of your external circumstances, you become truly free. You're no longer at the mercy of your environment, other people's behavior, or situations beyond your control. The practice, your daily mental retreat. Here's how to implement Marcus Aurelius's internal escape technique in your daily life. Step 1. Recognize the escape impulse. When you notice yourself thinking, "I need to get out of here," or "I can't handle this," pause for a moment. Instead of immediately looking for an external solution, recognize this as an opportunity for an internal retreat. Step 2. Apply the first principle. Ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this situation? How am I interpreting what's happening? What if this situation doesn't have the power to disturb my peace? What if my disturbance is coming from my thoughts about the situation? Step 3. Apply the second principle. Remind yourself, this situation is temporary. Everything changes. How many situations that felt overwhelming at the time do I barely remember now? What if I could see this current challenge as just one scene in a much longer movie? Step 4. Return with perspective. Come back to your external situation with a calmer mind and clearer perspective. You haven't escaped your circumstances, but you've escaped the mental prison that was making those circumstances feel unbearable. The compound effect of internal freedom. The more you practice these mental retreats, the less you'll feel the need to escape your life, and the more you'll be able to engage fully with whatever challenges and opportunities are in front of you. Think about Carlos, a police officer in New York City who used to fantasize about retiring early and moving to a quiet town in Montana. The stress of his job, the negativity he encountered daily, and the political tensions around law enforcement were wearing him down. He felt trapped by his pension requirements but desperate to escape his current reality. When Carlos started practicing Marcus Aurelius's internal escape technique, something interesting happened. He didn't suddenly love every aspect of his job, but he stopped feeling like a victim of his circumstances. He realized that his stress wasn't coming from the inherent nature of police work. It was coming from his thoughts about police work, his resistance to the challenges he faced, and his belief that he was powerless to change his experience. As Carlos developed the ability to find peace within himself regardless of what was happening around him, he became more effective at his job, more present with his family, and more satisfied with his life overall. He still plans to retire someday, but now it's a choice he's making from a place of empowerment rather than an escape he's seeking from a place of desperation. The ultimate paradox. Here's the beautiful paradox of Marcus Aurelius's approach. When you stop trying to escape your life, you often find that your life becomes much more enjoyable. When you stop depending on external circumstances to provide your peace, you become free to fully engage with whatever circumstances you're facing. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting situations that genuinely need to be changed. It means approaching change from a place of inner stability rather than inner desperation. It means making decisions based on wisdom rather than reactivity. But even with the ability to find peace within yourself and the skill to focus only on what's essential, life will still present you with challenges that test your resilience. That's where Marcus Aurelius's third and perhaps most profound technique comes into play, a perspective that can transform your relationship with difficulty, uncertainty, and even loss itself. 3. Nothing lasts forever. Why this thought will set you free. At 3:47 a.m., Rachel sits at her kitchen table in Seattle, staring at the termination letter she received yesterday. After 12 years with the same tech company, she's been laid off as part of restructuring. Her severance will last 3 months, maybe 4 if she's careful. Her mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks. Her daughter starts college in the fall. The weight of uncertainty feels crushing, like her entire future has just collapsed. Rachel's mind is spinning with catastrophic thoughts. What if I can't find another job? What if we lose the house? What if I can't pay for Emma's college? What if this is the beginning of everything falling apart? She feels trapped in a nightmare that seems like it will never end. Meanwhile, across the country in Phoenix, Michael is lying awake with a different kind of anxiety. His startup just received a second round of funding. His team is growing rapidly, and everything seems to be going perfectly. But instead of feeling happy, he's terrified. What if this success doesn't last? What if the market turns? What if our competitors catch up? What if I lose everything I've worked for? The fear of losing his good fortune is keeping him awake just as effectively as Rachel's fear of her bad fortune. Both Rachel and Michael are suffering from the same fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of life. and it's a misunderstanding that creates enormous unnecessary suffering for millions of people every day. Marcus Aurelius, who experienced both the heights of power and the depths of personal tragedy, discovered something that can transform how we relate to both success and failure, gain and loss, joy and sorrow. It's a perspective that initially sounds morbid or depressing, but actually becomes the foundation for profound peace and genuine freedom. The reality we don't want to face. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that Marcus Aurelius never tried to sugarcoat. Everything ends. Your career will end. Your relationships will change or end. Your health will decline. Your youth will fade. Your financial situation will fluctuate. Your current problems will be replaced by different problems. Your current joys will be replaced by different joys. And ultimately, your life itself will end. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. And according to Marcus Aurelius, fully accepting this reality is the key to experiencing genuine peace and freedom while you're alive. Most of us spend enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy trying to make the temporary permanent. We want to freeze the good times and fast forward through the difficult times. We want to control outcomes that are ultimately beyond our control. We want guarantees in a universe that offers none. Marcus Aurelius called this the memento mori principle, the remembrance of death. But it's not just about remembering that you'll die someday. It's about remembering that everything you're currently experiencing is temporary, and that this temporariness, rather than being a source of despair, can become a source of profound liberation. The anxiety of trying to hold on. Think about how much mental energy you spend trying to preserve things that are naturally impermanent. Consider James, a successful attorney in Manhattan who's built what looks like a perfect life. A prestigious job at a top law firm, a beautiful apartment on the Upper East Side, a loving wife, and 2 healthy children. But James lives in constant low-level anxiety because he's trying to control things that are ultimately uncontrollable. He works obsessively long hours because he's afraid of losing his position at the firm. He micromanages his children's activities because he's afraid they won't be successful. He monitors his investment portfolio daily because he's afraid of losing his financial security. He analyzes every conversation with his wife because he's afraid of relationship problems. James isn't enjoying his perfect life because he's spending all his energy trying to prevent it from changing. He's like someone trying to hold water in his hands. The tighter he grips, the more it slips through his fingers. Marcus Aurelius observed this pattern in himself and others, writing, "Think of how many changes you've already seen. The world is nothing but change. Our life is only perception." He realized that fighting against change is like fighting against gravity. It's exhausting, futile, and prevents you from learning how to work with the natural forces of life instead of against them. The liberation of letting go. Now here's where Marcus Aurelius's insight becomes truly revolutionary. When you fully accept that everything is temporary, you stop wasting energy trying to make the temporary permanent, and you start being fully present with whatever is happening right now. Let's go back to Rachel, who's dealing with the job loss. If she can apply Marcus Aurelius's perspective, her relationship with this crisis changes completely. Instead of seeing unemployment as a permanent catastrophe that defines her worth and determines her future, she can see it as one temporary phase in a much longer story. Rachel has already survived many changes in her life. She's been through economic recessions before. She's navigated career transitions, relationship changes, health challenges, and family crises. Each time she thought the difficult period would last forever, and each time it eventually passed and was replaced by something different. This doesn't minimize the real challenges Rachel is facing. She still needs to find work, manage her finances, and deal with the practical aspects of her situation. But it frees her from the additional suffering that comes from believing this situation is permanent or that it says something fundamental about her worth as a person. When Rachel stops fighting against the reality of change and starts working with it, she can approach her job search from a place of curiosity rather than desperation. She can see this transition as an opportunity to reassess what she really wants from her career rather than just a crisis to survive. She can be present with her daughter during this time instead of being consumed by anxiety about the future. The paradox of impermanence. Here's what's counterintuitive about Marcus Aurelius's approach. When you fully accept that nothing lasts forever, you actually start enjoying things more, not less. When you stop trying to make experiences permanent, you can be fully present with them while they're happening. Consider Sarah, a mother in Denver whose youngest child just started kindergarten. She's been dreading this moment for months, knowing that it marks the end of an era in her life. She's been trying to hold on to every moment, taking hundreds of photos, creating elaborate scrapbooks, and feeling increasingly anxious as the first day of school approached. When Sarah applies Marcus Aurelius's perspective, something shifts. Instead of trying to preserve this phase of motherhood by clinging to it, she can fully experience it by accepting its temporary nature. She can be present with her 5-year-old's excitement about starting school instead of being consumed by her own sadness about this chapter ending. She realizes that trying to hold onto this phase was actually preventing her from fully enjoying it. She was so focused on the ending that she wasn't present for the experience itself. The cosmic perspective. Marcus Aurelius frequently used what we might call the cosmic perspective to put temporary difficulties in context. He would remind himself that in the grand scheme of the universe, human life is a tiny little hiccup. This might sound depressing, but he found it incredibly liberating. When you zoom out and see your current problems from a cosmic perspective, they don't disappear, but they become more manageable. The presentation you're nervous about, the relationship conflict you're obsessing over, the financial worry that's keeping you awake. These are real challenges that deserve your attention, but they're not as earth-shattering as they feel when you're caught up in them. Think about David, a college student in Los Angeles who's convinced that failing his organic chemistry exam will ruin his chances of getting into medical school and destroy his entire future. He's been unable to sleep, eat, or focus on anything else because this one test feels like it determines everything. When David applies the cosmic perspective, he doesn't stop caring about his grades or his future career, but he stops carrying the weight of the entire universe on his shoulders. He realizes that this exam is one small event in what will hopefully be a long life full of many different experiences, challenges, and opportunities. This perspective doesn't make David lazy or careless about his studies. If anything, it helps him perform better because he's not paralyzed by anxiety about the consequences of failure. He can focus on preparing for the exam instead of catastrophizing about what will happen if he doesn't do well. The wisdom of seasons. Marcus Aurelius often used natural metaphors to illustrate the principle of impermanence. He observed that nature moves through seasons, periods of growth and periods of rest, times of abundance and times of scarcity, cycles of birth and death. Human life follows similar patterns. Consider Maria, a small business owner in Chicago whose restaurant has been struggling for the past year. She's been working 18-hour days, barely breaking even, and starting to wonder if she should just give up. The stress is affecting her health, her marriage, and her ability to think clearly about solutions. When Maria starts thinking about her business challenges as part of natural cycles rather than permanent failures, her approach changes completely. She recognizes that every business goes through seasons, periods of growth, periods of challenge, periods of transition. Instead of seeing the current difficulties as evidence that she's failing, she can see them as part of a natural cycle that will eventually shift. This doesn't mean Maria becomes passive or stops working to improve her situation, but it means she stops adding the extra layer of suffering that comes from believing difficult periods are permanent or that they reflect some fundamental flaw in herself or her business. She can focus her energy on practical solutions instead of wasting it on self-blame and catastrophic thinking. She can make strategic decisions about her business instead of reactive decisions based on panic. The freedom of non-attachment. One of the most profound aspects of Marcus Aurelius's teaching about impermanence is how it leads to what Stoics call non-attachment. This doesn't mean not caring about anything or becoming emotionally numb. It means holding your attachments lightly, enjoying what you have while you have it without needing to possess it permanently. Think about Robert, a father in Miami who's been struggling with his teenage son's rebellious behavior. Robert has been trying to control his son's choices, monitor his activities, and force him to conform to the vision Robert has of who his son should be. The constant conflict is damaging their relationship and creating stress for the entire family. When Robert applies the principle of impermanence, he realizes that his son's teenage phase is temporary, just like every other phase of his development has been. The sweet, compliant child Robert misses is gone, but the rebellious teenager he's struggling with now will also change and evolve. This doesn't mean Robert stops setting boundaries or caring about his son's well-being, but it means he stops trying to control outcomes that are ultimately beyond his control. He can focus on being the kind of father he wants to be regardless of how his son responds. He can maintain his values and expectations without attaching his peace of mind to whether his son meets those expectations. The practice of temporal perspective. Marcus Aurelius developed a specific practice for applying the principle of impermanence to daily challenges. Whenever he faced a difficult situation, he would ask himself, "How will I view this situation in 5 years? In 10 years? On my deathbed?" This temporal perspective practice is incredibly powerful for modern stress management. When you're caught up in immediate anxiety, anger, or frustration, stepping back and viewing the situation from a longer time horizon can completely change your emotional response. Let's apply this to Jennifer, a marketing manager in Boston who's dealing with a demanding boss who criticizes her work, takes credit for her ideas, and creates a hostile work environment. Jennifer spends her evenings and weekends obsessing about interactions with her boss, planning confrontations, and feeling angry about the unfairness of the situation. When Jennifer applies Marcus Aurelius's temporal perspective practice, she asks herself, "How will I view this situation in 5 years?" She realizes that in 5 years, she'll probably barely remember this boss's name. The specific incidents that feel so important right now will be completely forgotten. The anger she's carrying will seem like a waste of energy. This doesn't mean Jennifer should accept mistreatment or avoid addressing workplace issues, but it means she can approach these challenges from a place of perspective rather than reactivity. She can make strategic decisions about her career instead of emotional decisions based on temporary frustration. The mathematics of worry. Marcus Aurelius had a practical way of thinking about worry that's particularly relevant for our anxiety-prone culture. He observed that we spend enormous amounts of mental energy worrying about things that either never happen or turn out to be much less significant than we anticipated. Consider the mathematical reality of worry. How many of the things you worried about last year actually happened? Of the things that did happen, how many turned out to be as bad as you expected? How much of your mental energy was wasted on concerns that never materialized? Think about Lisa, a working mother in Atlanta who spends hours every week worrying about potential problems. What if her daughter doesn't get into a good college? What if her husband's company downsizes? What if her parents need expensive medical care? What if the economy crashes? What if her own health problems get worse? When Lisa applies Marcus Aurelius's perspective on worry, she realizes that she's been living in multiple imaginary futures simultaneously, none of which may ever occur. She's been suffering through dozens of potential problems that exist only in her mind. This doesn't mean Lisa stops planning for the future or being responsible about potential challenges. But it means she stops carrying the emotional weight of problems that don't currently exist and may never exist. The acceptance of natural cycles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The infinity of past and future gapes before us, a chasm whose depths we cannot see. So it would take an idiot to feel self-importance or distress, or any indignation either, as if the things that irritate us lasted." This quote captures something profound about the nature of human experience. We're living in a tiny slice of time between an infinite past and an infinite future, and most of the things that feel monumentally important to us right now will be completely forgotten in the larger flow of time. This perspective isn't meant to make you feel insignificant or nihilistic. It's meant to free you from the burden of taking temporary situations too seriously. It's meant to help you distinguish between what deserves your energy and attention and what doesn't. The practical application: daily impermanence practice. Here's how to implement Marcus Aurelius's impermanence principle in your daily life. Morning reminder. Start each day by reminding yourself that everything you'll experience today is temporary. The good moments won't last forever, so be present with them. The difficult moments won't last forever, so don't resist them unnecessarily. Stress response. When you notice yourself getting anxious, angry, or overwhelmed, ask yourself, is this situation permanent? How will I view this in 5 years? What would change if I fully accepted that this too shall pass? Evening reflection. Before bed, think about the day's events from the perspective of impermanence. What were you taking too seriously? What were you trying to control that's actually beyond your control? What would you have experienced differently if you had remembered that everything is temporary? The ultimate freedom. The deepest freedom that comes from accepting impermanence is the freedom from the need to have everything work out according to your plans. When you truly understand that everything changes, you can engage fully with life without needing to control outcomes. You can work hard without being attached to specific results. You can love deeply without needing to possess permanently. You can face challenges without needing them to be resolved quickly. You can enjoy success without needing it to last forever. This is what Marcus Aurelius discovered during his years of leading the Roman Empire through wars, plagues, and political crises. He learned that the peace he was seeking wasn't dependent on external circumstances working out in his favor. It was dependent on his ability to work skillfully with whatever circumstances arose, knowing that all circumstances are temporary. The integration of all three principles. As we reach the end of our exploration of Marcus Aurelius's wisdom, you can see how these three principles work together to create a comprehensive approach to inner peace. When you do less, focus on the essential, you create space in your life for what truly matters. When you go within, find peace internally rather than externally, you become less dependent on circumstances for your well-being. When you accept impermanence, remember that nothing lasts forever. You can engage fully with life without being controlled by the need for specific outcomes. Together, these principles create what Marcus Aurelius called tranquility, not the absence of challenges, but the presence of inner stability that allows you to navigate any challenge with wisdom, courage, and grace. The Roman emperor, who could have had anything he wanted, discovered that what he actually needed was already within him. And the same is true for you, whether you're dealing with traffic in Chicago, deadlines in New York, or uncertainty about the future anywhere in America. The peace you're seeking isn't waiting for you in some future circumstance. It's available right now. In this moment, through the timeless wisdom of one of history's most powerful and peaceful leaders. Your Stoic transformation starts now. You've just learned 3 life-changing principles from one of history's most powerful and peaceful leaders. Marcus Aurelius didn't develop these techniques in a monastery or a self-help seminar. He forged them in the crucible of real-world pressure, leading an empire through wars, plagues, and political chaos. If these principles could keep the Roman emperor calm while managing the fate of millions, imagine what they can do for your daily stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. Let's take a moment to see how these 3 principles work together to create the kind of inner peace that no external circumstance can disturb. First, you learn to do less, not because you're lazy, but because you're strategic. You discovered that saying no to the unnecessary creates space for excellence in what truly matters. You realize that the anxiety you feel isn't from having too much to do, but from trying to do everything without distinguishing between what's essential and what's just noise. When you ask, "Is this necessary?" before committing your time and energy, you reclaim control over your life and create the mental space needed for genuine peace. Second, you learn that your mind is your only true safe space, not because the external world doesn't matter, but because your internal world is the only place you have complete control. You discovered that seeking peace through changing your location is like trying to run away from your own shadow. The escape you're looking for isn't in a different city, a different job, or a different relationship. It's in developing the ability to find calm within yourself regardless of what's happening around you. Third, you learned that nothing lasts forever, not to make you depressed, but to set you free. You discovered that accepting impermanence doesn't mean giving up on your goals or not caring about outcomes. It means engaging fully with life without being enslaved by the need to control what's ultimately beyond your control. When you truly understand that both your problems and your successes are temporary, you can respond to both with wisdom instead of reactivity. These aren't just philosophical concepts to think about. They're practical tools to use immediately. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up and feel that familiar anxiety about your endless to-do list, remember Marcus Aurelius asking, "Is this necessary?" When you're stuck in traffic or dealing with a difficult person and feel the urge to escape, remember that nowhere you can go is more peaceful than your own soul. When you're overwhelmed by a challenge that feels permanent, remember that everything you see will soon alter and cease to exist. But here's what I want you to understand. Knowing these principles intellectually isn't enough. Marcus Aurelius didn't just think about these ideas. He practiced them daily, wrote about them in his personal journal, and applied them to every situation he faced. The transformation happens not when you understand these concepts, but when you begin living them. Start today. Start right now. Pick one situation in your life that's causing you stress and apply one of these 3 principles to it. Maybe it's that overwhelming project at work. Ask yourself what's truly necessary and what you can eliminate. Maybe it's that relationship conflict that's keeping you awake at night. Practice finding peace within yourself instead of trying to control the other person's behavior. Maybe it's that fear about the future that's consuming your present. Remind yourself that this too shall pass, just like every other challenge you've already survived. The beautiful thing about Stoic philosophy is that it doesn't require you to change your entire life overnight. It just requires you to change how you respond to your life, one moment at a time, one decision at a time, one breath at a time. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, never intending for anyone else to read them. They were his private thoughts, his personal reminders, his way of staying grounded in the midst of unimaginable pressure. But because he left us this record of his inner work, we get to benefit from the hard-won wisdom of someone who faced the ultimate test of these principles and proved that they work. You don't have to be a Roman emperor to apply this wisdom. You don't have to be a philosopher to benefit from these insights. You just have to be someone who's tired of being controlled by circumstances, other people's behavior, and your own reactive thoughts. You just have to be someone who's ready to discover the peace that's already within you, waiting to be accessed through the timeless wisdom of Stoicism. This is your moment of transformation. Not someday when your life gets easier, not when you have more time, not when your problems are solved right now, with whatever challenges you're currently facing. Marcus Aurelius found peace in the middle of chaos, and so can you. If this video has opened your eyes to the practical power of Stoic philosophy, I want to invite you to join our community here at Stoic Vivu. We're dedicated to making ancient wisdom accessible for modern life, providing you with practical tools and insights that you can use immediately to create more peace, clarity, and resilience in your daily experience. Hit that subscribe button right now and become part of a community of people who are committed to living with greater wisdom and inner strength. When you subscribe, you'll get access to more transformative content like this, diving deep into the practical applications of Stoic philosophy for everything from workplace stress to relationship challenges to financial anxiety. Give this video a like if it's helped you see your current challenges from a new perspective. Your like helps us reach more people who are searching for these timeless solutions to modern problems. Every like is a vote for making this kind of practical wisdom more widely available. And please share this video with someone in your life who could benefit from Marcus Aurelius's teachings. Maybe it's a friend who's been overwhelmed at work, a family member who's dealing with anxiety, or a colleague who seems to be constantly stressed. Sharing this content is an act of service. You're literally helping to spread wisdom that can transform lives. Leave a comment below and tell us which of these 3 principles resonates most with you right now. Are you ready to start doing less and focusing on what's essential? Are you prepared to find your peace within instead of seeking it externally? Or are you ready to embrace the liberating truth that nothing lasts forever? Your comment not only helps us understand what's most valuable to you, but it also encourages others in our community who are on the same journey. Remember, Marcus Aurelius became known as one of history's greatest philosophers not because he had an easy life, but because he learned to find peace in the midst of difficulty. He discovered that true strength isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about developing the inner resources to handle any challenge with wisdom and grace. You have those same inner resources. You have the same capacity for peace, clarity, and resilience that Marcus Aurelius developed. The only difference is that he practiced these principles consistently, and now it's your turn to do the same. Your Stoic transformation starts now. Your journey to unshakable inner peace begins with your very next decision. Will you choose to react to your circumstances, or will you choose to respond with wisdom? Will you continue to be controlled by external events, or will you start accessing the calm strength that's already within you? The choice is yours, and the time is now.